Welcome to Ask the Manager. This is going to be a very fast hour, I can tell, because Peter Blute couldn't even stop talking long enough for us to start the show. But I'm competitive with that, so I was talking as much as him. And our poor town manager's just sitting here nodding because we talk so much. So
reminiscing.
This is going to be a good one. So Peter Blute, of course, is our former state rep, former congressman. And he is still doing radio show on Sunday mornings on WCRN.
9 to noon.
9 to noon. Oh my, you can get to talk from 9 to noon.
Oh yeah.
Do you talk when you get home? And he is now the Worcester branch manager for Guardian Healthcare, which is the headquarters is in Shrewsbury, Massachusetts.
Yeah, we cover all of Central Mass. It's a home health care company with skilled nursing that you know so well, home health aides, physical therapists. The whole trend now is aging in place. We can't send all the baby boomers into nursing homes. It's too expensive. So there's a big need for nursing care and home health aides at home. And so we're growing here in Central Mass.
That's great.
Yeah.
And so, and your wife also works for the same company?
She works for them, yes.
Is she a boss?
I don't like to think so.
At home she is, whether he admits it or not. And the other important factor to know is he's the only person I know whose mother has her picture in the post office. Only for good reason, because our post office is honors her and is named after her.
Yeah, we were honored when President Obama signed that piece of legislation sponsored by my old friend and colleague, Congressman Jim McGovern, in honor of my mother after she passed away. So we're very honored to have that.
Yeah. That's wonderful. And of course, for those of you that are new to Shrewsbury, you may not realize that Peter comes from a very large family, and his siblings branch across the country, across the state, in Worcester County. And so he has a very famous set of parents and quite a few famous siblings too. And then there's Peter. Truthfully, and you're still in Shrewsbury.
Yes.
And you have 2 sons.
2 boys, yeah.
And
they just graduated. One graduated from URI, James, and the other, Daniel, is a sophomore at Salve Regina in Newport, Rhode Island. So they're doing well.
They're hockey players?
They played hockey for many years, and they were good hockey players. And now their kind of careers are moving on because they're concentrating on their studies, but in their new career. But they still like to play. And
I could go on with that, but I won't. So I'll let you ask the first question if you'd like.
Well, first of all, first time I've met you, I stopped by once and you were out that day. But congratulations,
Thank you, Peter.
You're doing a great job. Big shoes to fill, because we worked together with Mr. Carney and and your predecessor,
Dan
Morgado.
Yeah.
And they did a great job, in my view, as a citizen of Shrewsbury. It's a great town. I always refer to Shrewsbury after the Irish tenor song about Derry, the town I love so well.
Oh, yeah.
And that's what I feel about Shrewsbury. It's the town I love so well. But it's always been well run, and it's still being well run. Challenges, no doubt. The question I wanted to ask is kind of half joking. But during the early part of this year, when it was cold and there was snowstorms, remember that January was terrible. So I missed my recycling I didn't put it out for like 3 times.
Oh,
yeah, I got backed up. So I put it all out once, and then I come home from work, and they were like, and my sons had been home too. That's presaged the story. So I come home from work, everything's gone except for about 12 pizza boxes.
Oh, right.
I called it the pizza gap controversy, and I'm trying to find, I was on my show saying, what's going on? How come they didn't take my pizza boxes? They always did for the last 10 years.
Right.
What happened?
Yeah, so there's
What's the pizza thing?
Constriction in the recycling market is really what it is. It's really interesting, actually, because it's really a global pressure in that market that's really rapidly made it to the local level, because that's where most recycling comes from, is curbside pickups, and that's what we provide here in Shrewsbury. And China tightened their belts, to be quite honest with you, and said, we're not going to take everyone's trash. And the recycling that we do or did here in both in the Commonwealth and across the country really remained pretty stable. So that's a lot of the glasses and some of the plastics. But The paper industry, which is heavily in China, they got really strict on what they would accept. And that little bit of soiling that you see from that wonderful grease that you didn't get in yourself, or on yourself, in my case, prevents it from being properly processed. Whenever they're mixing it through, there's an oil in that. Those greases don't allow it to be turned into nice new paper products. It causes defects. So we had the wonderful cooperation and through significant leniency of our collector in the past, where they were able to pass that through and really help the town, because it wasn't going and getting tipping fees on it, and it wasn't being burned at the incinerator. But now, because of those market pressures, they can't accept it anymore. And I've said it on here a few times, we didn't do a good job of communicating that out to folks. The implementation or the effects of the changes made it to the collector before they notified us, so we didn't get a chance to talk with folks about it before, and we kind of implemented it as we went through the town, which isn't a good approach. So it's been a learning curve, since those cold months, and still is going on. So we still field a lot of calls about why didn't they take this, or all that. So there's some information on the website about it, but really interesting, actually, global story if you look at it.
It's a good system on the pay-as-you-throw. I think it's worked largely very, very well and created incentives to recycle. So there's lots of recycling in my neighborhood. I know that, and that's and few bags, not a lot of bags. One bag, maybe two bags sometimes during Christmas time or whatever. But it largely works. And I saw a report. I think it was on public access, that only 20% of the towns have pay-as-you-throw, which surprised me because it seemingly has worked so well.
Right. Yeah, it's doing what it was intended to do, right? That's what we talk about at the Finance Committee. It doesn't cover our entire cost. The entire cost of, from the tipping fees and the hauling, which is the largest portion, the collection at the curbside, is about $1.9 million now, and we generate almost $900,000. Upper $800,000 in revenue on an annual basis. And that's just reducing the burden on the tax rate, and allows us to do other things with those dollars that otherwise we'd have to use in that program. So it's really doing what it's supposed to do.
Also, the other issue I wanted to bring up was, you look at the Fairlawn development, and that building's coming down, and you see views of Shrewsbury you've never seen before. I kind of like that, say, oh, look at that. But what is going to go in there, do we know?
Yeah, so that's a Reliant medical facility. It'll be a surgery center that's going to go in there. Really kind of similar to the UMass facility that's going to have its ribbon cutting the 24th. So it'll be an ambulatory surgery center, probably also be able to process some procedures or MRIs, the right term, I'm not getting it to it, or you do too now as well, but all different types of procedures and care will be provided there. And those buildings, not that all we care about is the value of things, but those buildings are very expensive to build. You're talking about the new UMass facility that's somewhere around $700 per square feet because of all the intricacies and the redundancies and equipment.
And it will have a multiplier effect also, right? All the people who work there will need a place to shop, and need a place to get a sandwich, need a place to get something. And it'll help all the local businesses.
Yeah, and while you're waiting for someone to have a procedure, you'll sneak down the road and...
That'd be a good place for a sandwich shop, because people are going to come out from their colonoscopies and they're going to want to eat.
You're awfully hungry after those things. That's true.
So, do you want to talk about anything else about the marijuana?
The marijuana was interesting. My sons are millennials, and they're kind of like, hey, this is what the future is going to be like. So I get it, and the state passed that law and made it like other states. And I know the Shrewsbury Town Meeting voted to support that recreational use. How do you envision that happening? How many shops do you think will crop up, and how many tax revenues will Shrewsbury benefit from?
So a lot of questions related to the tax revenue. We'll talk about that. The town meeting voted to regulate the time, place, and manner of recreational marijuana facilities in the community. They limited the retail shops where any individual can buy or you could deliver from to 2. And we know one of those facilities most likely, or very likely, will open up on Boston Turnpike, Route 20, near, kind of near where the Edgemere Drive-In is, where Prime Wellness is opening up their RMD, or their medical marijuana dispensary. So that'll probably be
Now, is that going to be both recreational and medical?
It will be, yeah. So, and I was talking to the owner, John Glowick, about that, and I said, well, how's that going to work inside that facility? And interestingly enough, there's no physical changes that need to happen, because, you know, if you want to buy retail, you're still going to be put into a waiting room, and it's going to be a lot of one-on-one customer service, and the differences will occur within the inventory system and the computer systems in the background. So if you're going in for a prescription, to have a prescription filled, you wouldn't know if the person standing next to you is doing that or getting their recreational. Only the computer system knows, and things will be dispensed that way. So a very secure facility. There'll be up to 2 of them, so potentially 1 other location beyond that. And both Mr. Glowick's facility, Prime Wellness, and any other ones that may want to locate here will have to go through a process to have an agreement signed with the Board of Selectmen that would, you know, also lay out rules, regulations, and agreements between the parties, and talk about additional revenue above and beyond the 3% local sales tax that we would get. So when we start to think about revenue numbers, you know, we went into town meeting being very conservative. I spoke of numbers somewhere between 80,000, you know, in the first year, and upwards of mid-100,000s, 160,000 after the, you know, first 5 years or so. But from other conversations that I've had since then, it seems like there's a chance, based on other ways of looking at market models, that it could be really bringing in several $100,000 a year to the town. Whenever you look at the 3% sales tax, the 3% potentially through a host community agreement, putting those together, and then looking at retail sales, really what some folks think the market could handle around $15 million a year just in the Shrewsbury facilities.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah, it's a market that no one really knows, you know, how it's going to impact here, but you know, some models are based off of how many, what the prevailing use is in the adult community. And
I've been reading about the Colorado experience, and interestingly, one of the issues that the companies have is that now that it's legal, everybody and their brother are taking an acre or 2 and growing marijuana, so there's a surplus of marijuana, which drives the price down for those people.
Oh.
And then secondly, I wonder how much that's going to be an issue here, because the federal government does not recognize this as a good thing or a legal product. The Attorney General in particular is hot on this. The banks don't let them put money in the banks, and so they have to pay a lot of money for security, because they get stacks of cash about this high, and of course you have to have somebody protecting that. So it's not as clear cut as it. And then the other thing, and I wonder if you've talked to the chief about this, at some point we have to figure out, when are you impaired from smoking too much of this stuff? And when are you a danger to the drivers and the other people out there? Just like we do with alcohol, which has been largely a successful movement. You remember when we were young, 18-year-old drinking age, loose or no enforcement. So when we were 16, we could walk into a bar and be served, and there was no questions. No questions. Then we had the Great Awakening of drunk driving crashes, and they moved the age up gradually. The whole country did, and I think that's been warranted. And also a great success has been the education of young people about all of this. Most of these millennials are pretty wise to the world when it comes to getting out on that road after too many, which is a good thing. But on the marijuana side, what does the chief say about this?
It's a challenge. You're going to have to rely less upon a single test like a breathalyzer, and more upon the experience of the officer. So, you know, there's 2 parts. If anyone's familiar with a DUI or OUI process, it's what you blow in a breathalyzer, or you know, the physical test, but then there's also the testimony of the officer from their policing experience. And to this point, we're going to have to rely upon the policing experience, you know, whenever we have encounters with folks behind the wheel. Probably a market that someone could exploit and become a billionaire, right? If you can find that test to, you know, a rapid test for marijuana. But it just, the way the drug is found in the system just doesn't lend itself to that, you know, field field sobriety is one thing, but then bringing them back to the station and the equivalent of a breathalyzer just doesn't exist. So that is certainly a challenge and a concern that we have from a local government standpoint on how we're going to be able to keep everyone safe and keep folks off the road.
So that would be a good company to bring to Shrewsbury, a company that creates the breathalyzer
Yep.
for marijuana.
That would be fantastic. Of course, we've done breakthroughs in Shrewsbury
Right.
before
Right.
at the Foundation for Experimental Biology. Dr. Pincus and Dr. Chang in the 50s invented the birth control pill
Right.
here in Shrewsbury,
right.
which was kind of ironic because
I
in
know.
those days all the families had 10, 11, 12.
I know. So we really need to talk about the fire department. They had an awards evening, and they, for the first time, gave an award to a resident in town, which was Mrs. Barbara Donahue, because of all of her philanthropy and generosity to the town, to the fire department. They've been generous. Her and her husband had been generous with the fountains, with work at Edgemere Park, but specifically to the fire department, and they recognized and acknowledged her for that. I thought that was great. And then Michael Bowles and Kevin Weigold were at Station 2, and a woman came in labor
Oh boy,
and ended up delivering. So they received an
that's
award.
great.
Captain Sean Lawler received the Annual Achievement Award. He's the director of the SAFE program. And at Parker Road, which is where we are here, there's a preschool and there's a play area that was built with was it a fire station that they built in there? And along with other members of the fire department. And then, of course, Joe Milo's got the 2017 Outstanding Firefighter. And if anyone knows Joe, he's the go-to guy when they need to figure out what to do with the phones and the computers. And he's the mechanic. And he's been invaluable. He also fabricated, I don't even know what fabricating is, the metal for the rescue truck, and cut the cost in half. What's fabricating a truck?
Well,
mean?
you know, we put these vehicles and apparatus out in the toughest conditions, and that means a lot of rust and contamination and bad things happen to them when we have them out there on the street. So these trucks are very unique. It's not like we can go to a local parts dealer sometimes and get pieces for them. So he actually, you know, takes bare metal, regular metal, unshaped metal, and fits it to be customized on the truck, and saves us a lot of money, and we're very appreciative for him to do that. It saves us a ton of money every year.
And I think, to the chief's credit, I think it's great that the fire department has a recognition evening, and that they take the time to acknowledge the great work that's done all year long. Worcester Airport, this is exciting to me because it's expanding. So right now you can fly to Fort Lauderdale, you can fly to Orlando on JetBlue, and now in May, sometime in May, you're going to be able to fly
Philadelphia.
to JFK in New York City.
Philadelphia.
And then American is going, and you're going to be able to fly to Philadelphia.
Now, let's not forget which Massport CEO established that relationship.
Tell us about
with
that.
Worcester Airport.
This is a coincidence. Tell us.
Now, I remember back in the day, Governor Weld and Governor Salucci were very interested in getting Worcester Airport up and running off the ground. So they stressed to me that they wanted to do this. But also within the airport industry, it was very clear you can't give up runways.
Yeah.
Oh no, those runways, even if they're
Never
empty
come
for
back.
10 years, we still have to keep them because we're going to need them someday. The day has arrived.
Yeah. And to the credit of Lieutenant Governor Polito, I'm sure she's had an influence in getting this in place. Now, it's great for the convenience of
Oh, it is.
all of the residents, but this is what's going to bring the business people to a more convenient airport to open up Worcester and hopefully Shrewsbury as a result of this.
Well, I don't know what you guys think, but this whole Amazon thing we're hearing
Yeah.
about, you know, I'm thinking the Boston area is too packed. It's too crowded. The traffic is too much. The housing costs are too high. If they're going to bring 50,000 jobs, why not somewhere in Central Mass and have it, you know, in Shrewsbury, Blackstone Valley area? I think you got Worcester Airport. You get more affordable housing. Of course, I don't know where they're going to go, but I think that would make much more sense.
Be fantastic.
So what do you think of that?
I think it'd be great. We talked on the show a couple of weeks ago, or a couple months ago, about Worcester Regional Airport. I think it's fantastic. I worked a lot in Leicester because part of the runway's in Leicester with Andy Davis, who's the manager, and City Manager Augustus during the expansion. So I think it's a tremendous asset to the region and the convenience that it provides, but also the commerce that it'll provide in the future. Retrix Aviation also flies nonstop flights out to the Cape in the summer. So I mean it's really interesting. Retrix is an interesting company that does a lot of back-end stuff for air travel, the bags and all that stuff, handling, but also does a lot of corporate jet repair. So that brings dollars into the region, which is important. So.
Yeah, Sheriff Lou Evangelitis is on the Massport Board of Directors also. He's played a key role in all of this.
Good.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So yard waste drop-off days. Maybe we need a pizza box drop-off day. So important to know, it's at the Municipal Garage. There's one in June, July, August, September. This must be on the website, I assume.
It is.
And it's leaves and grass only, no brush, and you have to drop off on the specific days when the garage is open, and it's to Shrewsbury residents only. So the dates I can say are June 9th, July 14th, August 11th, and September 8th. But like I said, you can get that on the website. Trash bag fees.
Yes.
There's a lot of discussion and debate as to whether we should pay more for our trash bags or should we keep the price the same. What do you think of that?
Well, I think 75 cents, right now?
For the small bag.
Yeah.
Per bag? No,
Yeah.
big bag. Big
Big bag?
bag is 75 cents, I believe, isn't it? Is it?
I thought it was
Whatever it is, $7.50 for
$1.50, yep.
a bunch.
Yep.
That seems reasonable. The thing that I would think, sometimes the bags aren't durable enough for what you're trying to stuff in the pizza box.
You need to learn how to do the Shrewsbury stomp. You got to stand.
But I think, that's been the fee for how many years, so
Since
reasonable.
since it was instituted, and it is something that we need to think about. One of the challenges that again we talk at the Finance Committee and the Board of Selectmen is the pay. Whenever we're in a up economy, it's wonderful for everyone, but with the limitations that we have on our different revenue sources, as our expenses grow faster than 2.5%, in all honesty, we can't keep up, right? So, if our revenues aren't keeping up with our expenses, we have to shrink services. So I think it is time that we do consider it, and it's not something that we're going to do to price ourselves out of the market, because I think a lot can go wrong if we raise the bag fees too high. The program won't. The program won't work.
Yeah.
People they could contract
other
with
ways,
find other ways.
Illegal dumping.
Yeah, illegal dumping, spoil the recycling market, even with ill intentions of doing that.
Yeah, the system right now works pretty well, and everybody seems to be on board with it. But I can see how it's such a good service. They show up regularly. If it snows, they're there the next day, the very next day. They do a nice job, but I could see if you priced it too high, people would get upset and maybe do other things.
And the other part, we have to also wait and see what benefit all these grocery stores, et cetera, that we've approved when Market Basket opens, how that revenue, how we benefit from that revenue before we start raising prices on the residents. So I think there's time to at least wait and watch and see how we do benefit, and then be more creative with some of the properties that we've been trying to promote for more business to come in, because I think that's where the tax revenue would we'd all reap the benefits from that.
And I think if there is going to be a change, it's a volume market. We sell 700,000 bags a year or so. So, a change is going to be if there is a change, it would be very minor, a nickel or something like that per bag, to again, keep up a little bit, but not ruin the market, so. Yeah,
No, it makes sense.
Something we'll look
It
at,
makes sense.
yeah.
It's a good system.
Yeah.
It's amazing how much trash we Americans produce
Oh,
generally.
really?
Gosh, yeah.
It's
It's
amazing.
true.
It's very
Yeah.
amazing.
Now, speaking of trash, there's a petition for town meeting, which is May 21st, for a styrofoam ban. I don't know if you were aware
No, I
of
wasn't
that.
aware, yeah.
But I don't
The
think
plastic bag one shocked me too. I go in and say, give me the plastic bag. No, we
I
don't
know.
have any.
Well, the plastic bag, you can debate you know, I think it was more controversial. But the styrofoam, there were plenty of substitutes
Yeah,
out there that I
yeah.
think are just fine. I mean,
Yeah.
you can. I just consciously didn't buy styrofoam and bought paper bowls to use, you know, when we travel and to have with us for different types of picnics. And I consciously didn't take the styrofoam. It didn't hurt me not to take the styrofoam, so it hurts us to use the styrofoam. So I think it's less controversial myself.
There's no doubt there's a big problem in America with over packaging. We
Yeah.
package things like, if you buy razors, like we have to, you can't get in there
And how
without
about
knives and
Yeah.
hammers and stuff. Why is that so?
Yeah, it's true. Our kids' toys.
Oh my God, the debris that's left after Christmas, you go, what is all these boxes?
Yeah. So I think there are reasonable alternatives where, you know, we can. It's not going to alter our life.
Yeah,
You know, whether we drink out of a cup like people drink from Starbucks, or we drink out of a Dunkin' Donut cup, which we'll be changing anyhow.
paper, right?
It's not going to hurt us to not use styrofoam.
I
and to
prefer the
use-
paper ones anyways.
Do you?
Coffee, yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
So I mean, one of the most enlightening things to me, and I don't know why I didn't think of it, but in the past, when Mr. Rasden and the students came in and made their presentations, is that there's health effects. When you heat, you know, you have a hot liquid and you put it in styrofoam and then you drink it, right? So
Right.
what's it doing?
So it's
You know,
dangerous,
yeah,
and we.
or you get the box of chicken fingers and, you know, a little bit of the styrofoam is melted over the chicken finger. You know what I mean? There's health implications. So I think there's a more personal impact on this one.
Right.
The biggest impact to the town proper is going to be we utilize styrofoam trays in all of our schools. We don't wash the trays anymore. We don't have dishwashers in our buildings anymore, and you know that's we didn't design them that way. So just very limited capabilities as it relates to washing the pots and pans and so to speak. So we'll have to change the model, but change comes from all different directions. If that's the way the town meeting wants us to go, we'll find a way to adapt.
On the plastic front, they're now talking about straws and everything being, because they had that recent video that the guy took under the ocean, and it's kind of shocking. It's jarring, and you go, we got to stop this. We got to get that stuff cleaned up. All this plastic around all these fish, it's going to hurt humans at some point if we keep dumping this stuff into the
And to
ocean.
think about it, how did we get by? Well, you didn't, but how did I get by without using a plastic straw? You know, in my childhood, we didn't have plastic straws. So they were great when we got them, but, you know, we survived without them before. So the state's Chapter 90 program, funding assistance has been declared that we're going to get about $986,000 this year. And that program, it's pretty broad as far as how you can use it. As long as you can justify what you're using, you get the reimbursement.
Right.
So how will that impact us, and how does that relate to our, what was it, $70,000 of road capital improvements in the budget?
Oh, the capital improvement
Well,
fund.
Is
roadway.
that just, we have another $70,000 to use towards that, and it'll go fast anyhow?
Right. So
Because the projects are so expensive.
our Chapter 90 funding is the heart of our roadway improvement program across the entire town, and the number slipping my mind, but we have over 200 miles of roadway, well over 200 miles of roadway. So it doesn't go very far. I mean, you're talking several $100,000 to resurface a roadway. So we do have the highway improvement fund, or the local fund that we use we put money in here and there to try to either do the design work so we don't have to use as much of the state assistance and we can actually do the work out in the field. And it's never enough. So we're struggling to keep up. We do a number of different techniques, or that's why we do a number of different techniques, because we can't afford to just go in and pave or full depth reclamation on the road. So we either just do a skim off the top and put a small layer of asphalt and get 20 more years out of it, or we do a chip seal surface or something that ages or allows for the aging of the wear surface. So Yeah, I mean, it's a lot of money when you look at it. It'd be a lot of money in my bank account, but when we've got to resurface roads across the town,
Boom.
yeah, it
Go ahead.
goes
I
before you
served
know
on
it.
the House Transportation Committee in Washington, and infrastructure is so important, I think, that the federal government needs to step up and get some programs going so that we can rebuild a lot of our roads and bridges in this country. It's a real problem across the country right now.
Always scary when you see something like that happen and you think, what about our bridges? You know?
And don't you drive under bridges now and go, ooh, this one needs to be fixed?
But I drove on one the other day and it said 1933, you know, it was the
Oh,
New
yeah.
Deal.
Yeah,
And those
sure.
bridges, they did pretty good work on those
Yeah.
bridges.
Yeah.
But it might be time all these years later to reinvest in infrastructure. And the thing about infrastructure investment is that it tends to pay back because it creates economic opportunities. It pays salaries, but also more trucks can run,
Right.
more consumers can move on the roadways. I think it's important.
Right, you have to stay ahead.
Beal Early Childhood Center. What's the latest and greatest with the locations?
So the committee's voted, made some final votes. It needs approved at the state level now, but they've selected the former Glavin Center
Yeah.
property off of Lake Street. And they have also voted to go with the construction manager at risk, which is a little bit more in the budget estimate, but allows for a more tailored approach in both the final design and the construction of the project, which is the methods that we used on both the library and the middle school when they were constructed very successfully. So yeah, we're finally set on a location, and actually the committee will immediately turn, even before we get final state approval, to schematic design, which is the first actual detailed architectural design phase of the project throughout the course of the summer. And we'll be at a fall town meeting, most likely seeking an appropriation and borrowing authorization to fund that project. So it's going to come fast and furious. And
But that's part with the school building assistance program.
Correct,
Will weigh
yeah.
in at 80%.
Yes.
Is it 80% still?
well, no, it's not. It's not quite that much. It's shocking, actually. So the MSBA uses a formula and a model that's changed over time. I think the greatest amount of money on any single project is about 53%.
53%.
But they have ineligible costs and eligible costs, and we are projecting that our effective reimbursement rate's only going to be about 35% on this project.
Wow.
One of, again, the strong economy is good for everyone except for when you're trying to build something,
Right.
is the MSBA only reimburses up to $333 per square foot. And without bells and whistles and building the same school like Sherwood and the high school with durable materials that will last the appropriate amount of time, we're somewhere around $440 a square foot. So that $110 on every square foot of that building is 100% on the town, and those are big numbers.
Yeah.
But again, it's the up economy. It's good for everyone. There's no doubt about it. But things cost more.
And that's with a few of our projects, we would say, build fast, build now, because the prices are down. But, life is better when the economy's good.
One of the things I observe as a citizen in Shrewsbury is we have great boards. The Board of Selectmen, even went back to your era when you were on the board, really committed people doing great work. The school committee, the school MCAS scores are through the roof, great schools. But I did read that article in the Telegram about the numbers of students. Like the high school was built for, 1,200 students? And you got like 1,900 now, and there's more coming? That's a difficult challenge, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a huge challenge. I mean, it's one of the challenges with all of our buildings. If you look at, outside of Sherwood, if you look at all the buildings that we built within the last 20 years, they're all over capacity. And this Beal project is pulling as many students from other elementary schools into that school as it is taking away from the current Beal school. So it's really a district-wide and an elementary school-wide solution. It's not just the replacement of the Beal. Yes, that physical aspect is going away, but yeah, I mean, people want to go to successful places and well-run places, and the Shrewsbury Public Schools certainly meet all those and beyond. And that's a good thing that we have to deal with, to be honest with you. I've worked in communities where there hasn't been that growth, and it's much more challenging. We'd rather have to deal with being desirable than not desirable. So it's a lot of good challenges, but they're certainly there. You know, the high school is over capacity. There's no other way to put it. And
speaking of Beal, what about the Beal reuse?
Beal Reuse Committee, you know, has had some initial meetings. We're gonna we as a town and the school will occupy that building through at least the end of the spring of 2020. So we have a little bit of time. They will begin in earnest, you know, throughout the course of the summer, so we can have some potential solutions whenever we go to town meeting to say, hey, this is what may happen there. I'm actually very excited to say that I've had private business owners in the community already reach out to me and say, could we, you know, how could we potentially get a hold of this building or this property? So that's very exciting.
It's a nice piece of property.
So we know it's a hot spot.
Yeah,
it's a nice piece of property located right in downtown. And they got that field area in the back. It's nice, although you'd have to rebuild the building.
So yeah, it would be a challenging renovation if you could do it at all, but that's true. That's a good thing.
Yeah. Now, we've talked a few times about the Shrewsbury High School field will be moving forward because of all the generous donations.
I think that's great.
It is.
Very necessary.
And speaking of that, we have a St. John's alumnus with us today, and they've done a fabulous job over at the baseball field.
Yes, they have, yes.
And now I'm hearing talk that there's going to be turf fields also for their football.
I haven't heard that. I haven't heard that. It's interesting. But observing and being a fan of Shrewsbury's teams, I'd go to a lot of the games. You notice there's so many teams now with the men and women teams. The field gets beaten up in the first, I mean, you've heard the argument, you made the argument, it gets beaten up in the first month of the season and then it's a mess.
And if it rains, good luck.
And rain. So turf is really a great solution. I think that's going to be great to see a Friday night St. John's Shrewsbury game there. That's
when Shrewsbury wins, of course.
Well, they do win. The best game I ever saw in high school was when Shrewsbury knocked off St. John's when they had the quarterback there. I think it was 2008, and John Andreoli's son was the St. John's quarterback, and it was a great game. And Shrewsbury was undefeated that year, won the bowl game. St. John's was good too, though, and it was packed. I mean, the number of people watching that game, the excitement was so great.
Why can't I remember who
came down? It was I can't think of his name. But he was a great quarterback. And it came down to the last minute. Shrewsbury goes up over St. John's, but the Shrewsbury fans run on the field in excitement.
Oh, no.
And the ref's going like this to the coach, Terry Wallace, going, geez. And he threw the flag 15 yards. So Andreoli drives him down the field, and then they kicked the field goal, and he missed it by this much. And the Shrewsbury fans came on the field. I mean, it was the greatest high school game I'd ever seen.
And you know, I had 2 kickers out of my 3 sons. 2 were kickers. So
really?
Whether
know how that goes.
Whether it's my team or the opposing team, I always feel for the kickers, even in the pros. I always feel for the kickers.
The quarterback was Jawad Wateen.
Oh.
Remember that team?
Yeah.
That was a great team.
Yeah.
A couple of college players, a couple of professional players on that team. That was a great team.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, so we could go on about the competition there, but so with the capital budget, we already talked about the Chapter 90. You talk about replacing a self-contained breathing apparatus program for the fire department. Now, that's very expensive, and it's $400,000, but so necessary.
Yeah, so necessary. And we're really excited about the new technology that this new company in the market, it's tested and true because it's a MSG mine safety company that has actually entered into the fire apparatus market. Same concept, right? They're providing breathing apparatus for miners. But they have these systems now have Bluetooth technology, built-in infrareds within the mask, so we don't have to buy a $10,000 infrared system anymore. They're there for every firefighter. So it increases safety, increases communication, reduces fogging in the mask itself, just much safer. And it's critical, and we're looking at putting more firefighters out there, but you know, as it stands right now, if there's a structure fire, you know, right now, we're going to maybe get 4 people there until we can call more people in. And when we send, those guys we can ask them all we want, but they're not going to wait outside the building when they get there. They're going to
Right.
go in and do what they're trained to do.
Especially if there's people
Yeah,
inside.
the safer we can keep them when they go through the door because of this simple technology is amazing. So it is $400,000. We'd love to find a way to phase it in. I've been asking chiefs, all over the state that I know, how do you phase it in? You can't, because everything has to be compatible. You can't have one valve be a type A and one valve be a type B. Everything's got to connect, because when you're at that scene, everything's got to work together. So these will last us for 10 years, and we'll be on that replacement cycle and stay within the NFPA standards and keep our firefighters, men and women, safe. And it's a critical investment in the community.
I agree. Now, you said 4 firefighters will get there first. And I had a flashback, and I can't even believe that we lived through this. But in Edgemere, they would have 1 firefighter in a station, and that firefighter would get to the fire by himself. And so that was just outrageous to think of that. And we worked hard to make sure that we got at least 2 firefighters there. But it's a different world, and actually even now some of the new buildings are made with what will be debatable as to whether the new buildings have safer material or not, and only time will tell with that.
A lot of major buildings are wood construction again, with the engineered wood.
Can you believe that?
It's amazing. No, we've got great first responders in Shrewsbury, the police department, the fire department. They do a great job. They really do. A couple of years ago, on a winter night, my wife throws in the fire, those little crates that hold the tangerines.
Oh, yeah.
She throws it in, and it grows up too fast, and it creates a chimney fire.
Oh,
And it's like this loud thing, and the Shrewsbury Fire Department came with that mega truck.
The tower.
The one that was like unbelievable. It almost couldn't get around my tree at the end of the driveway. But they had that thing. I mean, it was bang, 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 and they fixed it. And thank God for them, because it would have been the whole house if it had kept going. And they did a great job.
they do. And they're always great as first responders, even, so not just fighting fires, but as first responders and working, because they usually will arrive at your house before the ambulance, and
Yes.
they're very well prepared. But speaking of that, is there any further discussion or exploring of what it would be like to have our firefighters as the EMTs?
We haven't talked about that a lot lately. We've had some cursory conversations between the chief and myself. We just signed another 5-year agreement with UMass. We don't pay any money for our EMT services as a town. They recoup the costs by providing the services on a company-wide basis. So that's a good situation for us to be in, but it's something that we could explore.
And I don't know how I feel about that, because we've had such good luck and such professionalism with the EMTs from UMass, with their direct communication with the emergency room physicians and how that all works out. So it's been a good system. So
Many lives saved because
Right.
of their capability.
big changes, if that were to happen, it would be a very difficult decision, I think.
And before we get off that, if I may just add one thing, because I know the chief or perhaps Joe Milos would yell at me if I didn't say this. That $400,000 investment comes with a 10-year warranty. So not only expect it to last for 10 years, but if one part or piece breaks on it, we can just replace it without any additional cost, which is a huge benefit to the
That
town
is a
as well.
huge benefit.
Yeah.
One other question I had that interests me is there any interest in the place down on the lake, Buca di Beppo? It's a gigantic building, used to be McQuail's.
Yes.
Remember when it was McQuail?
Yeah, I loved it as
I did
McQuail's.
too. It's a great place. It's beautiful right on the water in the summer. And I know the bridge construction hurt a lot of those businesses
Right.
there. They really did. But now that the bridge is beautiful and working well, any interest in that?
Yeah, we have heard some recent interest and met with the property owners. The Jan Property Company owns that. And they were looking to, start to replace the roof and try to make the property a little more attractive.
Oh, good.
So
Good.
we are hopeful that.
That's a great spot.
Yeah.
It really is.
Yeah. So yeah, you could pull up in the boat off of Lake
Oh, yeah.
Quinsigan and all that stuff. It
And
is
people
wonderful.
did.
Yep.
Yes.
And it's really nice to just sit there and look out, and it doesn't matter what season. It's just beautiful to be right on the lake like that.
And when you mentioned the Glavin Center is maybe the new location with the school, it brought back a lot of memories because 4th of July,
Yeah.
where do you go to see the fireworks? But
Yeah.
right up there on that hill up there,
Yeah.
packed with Shrewsbury people.
Yeah, it's true. I was just thinking of that myself.
Yeah,
I wonder if
yeah.
more people will think that they should go there when there's a school there.
Maybe.
How we already have to replace a boiler at the senior center.
All
Is-
these
is
new
that
buildings aren't
so?
so new anymore.
Is it? I know.
Even I graduated high school,
Really?
a lot longer ago than I'd like to
Wow.
Yeah, it
admit.
goes by
I
fast.
just
It
can't
does.
believe it's time.
Yeah.
Yeah,
For
20,
that.
20 years.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's not failing, but you know how our public facilities are, and our public facilities department and public buildings department runs things as we should. And
Yeah.
we've had some issues, but it's time to replace it to preserve the asset. And it is around $50,000, and that is on the capital plan for this coming year. And it's a critical building.
Yeah.
Oh, it is.
I just can't believe it's 20 years.
Yeah.
I know.
Build it and they will come.
It's
we
a
used
great
to say.
place, and the senior centers all around the area are very important
Yeah.
places. Give people socialization.
I wonder how long it's going to be before we talk about when to expand the senior center.
Oh, yeah.
I figure that'll be coming too.
Oh, yeah.
And that's a good thing, because when people use that, they're vibrant, they have activities, they're not alone, they have a place to, socialize.
There's, lectures, people come in,
Right.
talk about health care.
I know.
The
Men's
sheriff
club.
puts on some stuff.
The men's
it's great.
club.
Men's club.
I
goes
wonder
to
when it'll
sing.
integrate.
I was at the men's club this morning.
Yeah, and they have good speakers and
good donuts.
It's men's and good donuts.
Well, the Boy Scouts are now just the
I
Scouts,
know,
okay?
so it's only time.
Times are changing.
Only time. So what did you talk about?
Town meeting.
Oh,
Yeah,
did you?
Yeah.
Was there a lot of interest?
Yeah, there was quite a few guys there. Yeah, the room was full. It was nice. I enjoyed it. That's my third time there, so it's nice to get to know that group that goes
And
there.
I bet they were happy to see you, because
fun.
I think it's good to reach out and communicate.
Yeah,
I was reading you went to West Virginia.
I did. yes.
Yeah, I visited Morgantown a couple
Yeah.
times and when I played for Boston College.
Yeah,
We played against West
sure.
Virginia. And
What
it was
position?
I was a defensive end.
Yeah.
But I remember pulling in. We flew into Pittsburgh,
Mm-hmm.
and then we took the bus, and then all of a sudden these hills show up, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you're wondering how the cows are standing up, because right?
Didn't you ever
what I'm
walk?
It's
Your
true.
walk's crooked.
It's
I know the hills are like so steep,
From
and the
chasing the
cows are
cows.
like.
Yeah.
yeah. It is a very
a good
hilly,
campus.
rural
Nice
place.
campus.
Yeah.
Is it a nice
Morgantown
campus?
It's a nice
is a
campus,
beautiful
yeah.
campus.
It really
yeah.
is.
And that time's gone by fast too.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah. A lot longer
me
ago
about
than I think.
There's to me, it's a funny typo
Mm-hmm.
in the town meeting booklet.
Okay.
And that's on page 45, Article 13. It says that the Finance Committee recommended
Yep.
the water rate
Yeah. It's a
system
typo.
change, and they did not recommend it.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
so I finally sat down to read the book today, and I just laughed when I realized which article it was and what it was about. I just thought that was kind of funny, but I have that kind of humor in me.
Speaking of the water, and I know it's a precious commodity, and Shrewsbury's been pretty tough on lawn owners, making the lawns and all that. So I used to jokingly say on my radio show that in Shrewsbury, the lawn police have night vision goggles.
Why did you get in trouble?
Once.
See, he admits to it.
They give you a ticket or something.
Did they?
I said, okay, all right.
And there's another article about taking the fluoride out of the water again.
Why would they do that? 50 years of experience that it's good for the teeth and no harmful effects.
And CDC, I always say this, the CDC, because I looked again, I thought maybe I missed something. Did something change? CDC recommends fluoride in the water. American Dental Association, American Academy of Pediatrics, U.S. Public Health Service, World Health Organization, and CDC says that 1 of 10 great public health achievements in the 20th century.
I would agree with that.
Was
I would
putting
agree with
fluoride
that.
in the water.
And then the flip side is true also. In those communities that don't have fluoride,
Right.
their children's teeth are really struggling, and the dentists have to apply it at great expense to apply fluoride. So, you know, we've had an experiment in this for a long time, a public health experiment. Maybe it goes back to that movie, Dr. Strangelove, where the crazy general was talking about the fluoridation of being a communist.
Oh, right,
Remember
right,
that?
right.
I never saw that movie.
You never saw Dr. Strangelove?
No.
Great film.
You could ask my husband, I'm
Classic
sure he
film.
did. And then there's discussion of the electronic voting system. And that would be taking money from other things that we're fighting to budget. I mean, because what would the expense be? We don't even know. But
Yeah, so there's an upfront expense of probably about $20,000, and then about $5,000 a year for licensing, software maintenance, things like that.
and then for each town meeting, there would be an expense each time you use it too?
It depends.
So this would be
Depends
used at
which
the town
model.
meeting?
Just for
Yeah.
town meeting?
Just for town meeting, so they pull, push a button.
Push a button.
Some people believe that way people can see how you vote. I've always figured if you had to stand up, because there were other people saying they wanted secret ballots.
That's
And
right.
I always
Ballot,
feel, stand up and be counted for. Whatever it is that you're voting, stand up and be counted for. And I'm not saying it wouldn't be good to have electronic voting machines, but I just think that
Now, you and I
we
have
have money
both,
well spent.
you and I have both been on the ballot. How many people do you think who said they were going to vote for us didn't?
Oh, and you go back and you go, that creep
Somebody
didn't even
didn't.
vote. But you want, speaking of that, now you got the guilties.
Exactly.
Voting day, I said, now we all have to vote. I was out doing errands, and my son said to me, we've got to go home and pick up Grandma, we're going to go vote. I said, yes. 8:15, my husband says, I forgot to vote, and I went, 4 votes in my house, nobody voted. We totally forgot. I've never forgotten to vote.
No.
There's been times I've been stuck at work and I
Some
couldn't
people
vote.
are busy and
And
stuff, yeah.
I actually learned to get an absentee ballot because I never knew when I was going to get out of work. So I would get an absentee ballot. But this time it was like I had all day to vote. And it went right out of my head. I was on the ballot.
I'll tell you this story. I went to vote, this was a couple of years ago, and there was an opening for the town meeting in my precinct. There was nobody on the ballot. So I said, I'll put my son's name, Daniel Blute. So I put it in. The town clerk calls me the next day and says he won.
No.
Yeah, I said, how many votes did he get?
One.
So now he couldn't do it. I said, he can't do it. He's down at college. But now we call him Landslide Danny Blute.
Oh, that's funny. I thought you were going to tell us you put your own name down.
Oh, no.
You'd be a rabble rouser in the audience if you were there.
Oh, I've tried to be.
And there's so many zoning articles,
Yes. Yeah,
which is good.
A
I
lot
mean,
of them are.
so-
Yeah.
But will it be forever that we have all these zoning articles? It's been a few
It
years.
seems to be, yeah. A lot of them are administrative in nature, cleaning up, the table, the use table, alphabetizing it, making some, low-hanging fruit changes to really make it easier for folks to read and understand. I think the most controversial one is the special permit process for duplexes to try to keep, potentially try to keep the character of some of our gentrifying neighborhoods, our capes and our single-story ranches. From having a Titanic move in next to them, something that doesn't fit and doesn't feel right. So I think that is really the most controversial one, if there is a controversial one at all. So I think the other ones are pretty simple.
I wonder what people will think, because I thought, okay, so they'll this is just one more step for the Zoning Board of Appeals and Planning Board to be able to do their job, and it's another tool to have them show that they're being reasonable. And I thought that was good until someone said, well, wait a minute. People have a right to put what they want on their property. And I thought, yeah, they do. And so I go back and forth. I'm not sure how I'll feel that night. I need to hear what more people have to say about it, because hopefully there's some convincing argument.
It's certainly true in other towns, like a Concord. They get some strict rules there.
Yeah.
And you can't put the colors. Can't be certain colors of houses. So certain communities take a hard line on that.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's a market argument, right?
Yeah.
Like, who's controlling the market? If I want to build a duplex here and I own the property, then maybe the entire neighborhood will turn into, such.
And every time I see a duplex go up, I think, ugh, another duplex. And when you have the ones where you have a larger parcel of land, but it's not that big, but it's enough to jam in multiple duplexes on
Yes.
one piece of property, then all of a sudden that neighborhood has really changed.
How many apartments are going to go in that one on Route 20 and down there?
If on the MOA, or excuse me, on the Edgemere Drive,
The Edgemere Drive, yeah.
250.
250.
Yeah, so same as the Lakeway Commons.
That's challenging for the schools because obviously there'll be many families.
Well, you think it's challenging, but they were very creative at what they did. So, for example, with the building, they wanted to put in, what was that room called, a loft or something? Or
A den.
A den, and they had to take the den out because it could be converted into another bedroom. So they eliminated it, and the
I
builder
see.
was very cooperative and
They
eliminated
tightened
that.
it up.
Yeah.
So you don't have large numbers of children going into those apartments. And someone had said, was it you, that there was less than 10 at this time, less than 10 children going into the school system
Out of Lakeway.
out of Lakeway. Yeah.
Well, that's not that
So,
bad. Yeah.
our fear is, oh my word, we're, overloading the schools. But based on what it costs for those apartments and the size, there's more 1-bedrooms and 2-bedrooms. They don't have 3-bedroom apartments. They don't have that room to expand and make it a 3-bedroom apartment. So it limits the number of children that you actually see there, which I think is good.
Yeah.
I know, I heard one woman speak of living at Lakeway, and she was very happy living there. She was thrilled to be in that environment, and I drive through there a lot, and it seems like a nice development. I would have liked to have seen more trees. I envisioned a bigger common area, but I think it's actually nice. I want more stores that I want to shop in, but I'm happy with what's there. I don't even drink Starbucks coffee, but boy, what a line at Starbucks. I mean, you know how you see at McDonald's, those people, it's like, wow, look at all those people going to McDonald's.
Some people think that's too strong a coffee, but I like this
Yeah,
strong.
well, Starbucks has a line of cars
Yeah,
going
they do,
through their
yeah.
drive-through, and
Yeah.
I think it's great. I'm happy to see that. Shrewsbury Youth and Family Services, they're requesting $100,000, and their public programs are growing. The scope of what they were originally, for their mission of what they were supposed to accomplish has evolved along with our society and along with what the needs are, and it's a very, very busy place, and there is a
Yes.
dramatic need. Do you think that will stabilize at some point, or do you think that it'll just keep going and going?
I think we're still on the upward trend.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we utilize them. A lot of other towns have that as an internal town department, so we have a good public-private partnership there with the nonprofits.
And fundraising, they work very hard to fundraise.
Yeah, so we could never do it on our own like that.
And we just received the organizational assessment, which is a good size piece of reading material, but it seems to be, at first glance, very well done.
Yeah, some modernization attempts at how we structure ourselves. So yeah, I think it's time. I told the men's club today that we're still operating off of that piece of vellum that Mr. Carney drew in 1957 on how we structure ourselves. And,
Yeah.
that's the truth. That's literally how we operate. 18 direct reports to the town manager, for all those different departments. So I think we can do better and get efficiencies out of it and provide better services.
Well, another fast hour, Peter. Thank you for
having
being
me.
here.
I appreciate
Peter.
it.
was
Thank
a
you
great,
very much. It was
great
fun.
time, great
Thank you.
hour. Thanks for watching us, and we'll see you next time.